I've always hated that phrase. The backup kid. I didn't even hear it for the first time until I was 16, though I had felt it long before then. Every family photo, every dinner table conversation, every holiday plan made it crystal clear. I was the understudy, the safety net, the afterthought. My older sister Emma was the star of the show. Emma was the golden child. Brilliant, beautiful, and bold. Head cheerleader, straight A student, full ride scholarship to a private university. She could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was Alex. Just Alex. I kept my head down, didn't cause trouble, and made average grades that my parents never really acknowledged. At best, I got a polite good job when I passed a test. Emma, on the other hand, got banners, cakes, and a full-blown party for scoring well on her SATs. It wasn't that I hated her. I wanted to. Sometimes I tried to. But the truth was, Emma never treated me badly. Not directly. She didn't bully me or rub her success in my face. But she also never defended me when our parents ignored me. She never acknowledged the way they overlooked me in every decision. And when I was 16, I found out why. It was after Emma's high school graduation party. Everyone was buzzing about her future. My parents had rented out a banquet hall for her celebration. Hundreds of guests, a custom cake, even a slideshow of her life. Not a single photo of me in it. I was used to it by then. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, I walked past the kitchen and overheard my mom talking to one of our aunts. They were tipsy from champagne, laughing about Emma's perfect life. And then my mother said, "It." Just loud enough for me to hear as I passed. Thank God Emma turned out so amazing. Alex was always just the backup kid. You know, in case we didn't get it right the first time. My feet froze. My brain tried to convince me I heard it wrong, but the words rang louder than any scream. The backup kid. I didn't cry that night. Not then. I just walked out of the house and sat on the curb for hours, staring at nothing. Everything made sense now. The way they never prioritized me, never celebrated me, never asked about my dreams. I wasn't meant to shine. I was meant to stand by, just in case their golden child faltered. So I made myself a promise that night. If I was going to be backup, it would be on my terms. And one day, they would regret ever saying it. Over the next few years, I quietly built my life. I didn't want their help anymore. I worked part-time jobs through college, applied for every scholarship I could find, lived in tiny dorms and skipped meals to save money. I chose business and finance. Something that made sense to me. Something I could control. I learned how to invest, how to budget, how to build something from scratch. Emma, meanwhile, was living her dream. Or so I thought. Prestigious college, fiancé from a wealthy family, an Instagram-perfect life. Our parents still talked about her like she was royalty. I visited home less and less. The distance helped. The silence was easier than pretending I didn't care. It wasn't until 5 years later that I saw Emma's name pop up on my phone. A call, not a text. I stared at it for a solid minute before answering. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Alex." Her voice cracked. I didn't know who else to call." I found out she had left her fiancé. He had been cheating. Her job offer after college fell through. She moved in with friends, then got kicked out when rent piled up. Our parents, shockingly, weren't helping. Dad had retired early and burned through savings. Mom said Emma needed to learn resilience. Oh, now they cared about that? Emma asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks. I hesitated. The memory of that one phrase, backup kid, echoed again. But I said yes. When she showed up at my door with nothing but a suitcase and puffy eyes, I realized something had shifted. She didn't look like the golden child anymore. She looked lost. "Thanks," she whispered. "Really?" I nodded and stepped aside. "Just for a few weeks," I said. "We'll figure things out." Emma moving in wasn't as dramatic as I expected, at first. She was quiet, polite, and kept to herself. I gave her the guest room, clean sheets, and even set up a little desk for her to job hunt. I worked from home most days, running the small but growing marketing agency I had built from scratch. It wasn't flashy, but it paid well, better than most people expected. Emma would come out of her room every morning with a forced smile and pour herself a cup of coffee like nothing was wrong. She'd scroll job listings, send out resumes, and apply to anything remotely related to her degree in communications. But after a week, her frustration started to show. "No one wants to hire someone who's been out of the loop for a year," she muttered one morning. "They all want 2 years of experience for an entry-level job. It's ridiculous." I didn't say much. I just nodded and sipped my coffee. She was still holding on to the idea that her degree and charm would carry her, that the world owed her the same deference our parents had always shown. 2 more weeks passed. Emma hadn't gotten a single call back. She started sleeping in. Her optimism slipped. Then one night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Loud, desperate sobs. The kind you try to smother with a towel. I waited until the next morning to bring it up. "Do you want to talk?" I asked gently over breakfast. She shook her head. "I'm just tired." But something cracked that day. She started opening up. Not just about the job hunt, about everything. Her ex had been emotionally abusive, controlling, and cruel. Her picture-perfect life had been a curated illusion. She felt like a fraud. And when she told Mom and Dad the truth, they'd brushed it off. "Your generation is too sensitive," Mom had said. "You need to toughen up." "Maybe if you picked a more practical major," Dad added. Hearing that made something in me burn. Not for me this time. For her. I'd spent so long resenting Emma, but now I saw how deep the damage went. Our parents didn't just favor her. They used her as their trophy, their social status symbol. And the moment she cracked, they abandoned her. We talked more over the next few days, about our childhood, our roles in the family. I finally told her what I'd overheard that night after her graduation, about the backup kid. She looked stunned, then ashamed. I never knew they said that. God, Alex, I'm so sorry. I didn't need her apology, but hearing it helped. It was the first time she acknowledged what I'd felt for years, that I wasn't crazy, that I was treated as less. Something shifted between us after that. For the first time, we were equals. 2 people who had been failed by the same parents, just in different ways. A month later, Emma was still jobless. But she was trying. I started showing her the ropes of my business, how I managed clients, built strategies, pitched campaigns. She was a fast learner, creative, sharp, and surprisingly good at connecting with people. "You could honestly help me out," I said one day. "I need someone to manage outreach and client follow-ups. It's part-time, but it pays." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Really?" So she started working for me, from my guest room. And within a few weeks, she'd helped land a new client using a pitch deck she designed herself. I gave her a bonus. She cried again. But this time, it was from pride. For the first time in years, she wasn't the golden child. She was just Emma. And she was okay with that. A few weeks went by, and Emma was slowly starting to rebuild herself. The work she did for me wasn't glamorous, but it gave her a sense of accomplishment she hadn't had in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually helping her instead of just being resentful of her existence. But as things improved for Emma, the tension with our parents started to resurface. They had never fully accepted Emma's decision to come live with me, and though they tried to act like everything was fine, their subtle disapproval became harder to ignore. It started with a phone call from Mom one Sunday afternoon. "I heard Emma's been living with you for a while," she said, her tone icy. "Why didn't you tell me she was struggling?" "I'm not her keeper, Mom. She came to me for help, and I gave it," I replied, trying to keep my patience intact. "I didn't raise you to be her savior, Alex," she snapped. "She needs to figure this out on her own. You're enabling her." I felt my blood boil, but I stayed calm. Maybe if you hadn't made her feel like she had to be perfect all the time, she wouldn't have ended up like this. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Mom muttered something under her breath and hung up. That was the first time I realized that our parents would never fully understand. They were stuck in the past, believing that their way of parenting, the overbearing, controlling, and ultimately neglectful way, was the best. Then came the real kicker. A few days later, Dad called me. "We're planning a family get-together. Next weekend," he said, his voice cheery. "It's been a while since we've all been together, and we think it's time for a reunion. You're coming, right?" I glanced over at Emma, who was sitting across the room, working on a presentation for one of my clients. She didn't look up, but I could tell she was listening. "I don't think it's a good idea, Dad," I said, my voice firm. "You know Emma's not doing well. It's not the right time." Dad's response was immediate and cutting. "Don't. Be ridiculous, Alex. She's fine. She's just being dramatic, like always. You need to stop enabling her." I nearly dropped the phone. "Dramatic!" I yelled. "You've never listened to her. She's struggling, and you've completely ignored it. You don't get to just brush this under the rug because it's inconvenient for you." There was a long pause. I could feel Dad's disappointment radiating through the phone. "Fine," he muttered before hanging up. I put my phone down slowly, feeling the weight of the conversation hang in the air. That was when I realized, no matter how much Emma and I tried to move forward, our parents weren't ever going to change. They would never see us as individuals, just as extensions of their own broken expectations. The next weekend, Emma and I stayed home. We didn't attend the family gathering, and as the hours passed, I saw a change in her, a deep sense of relief. She was no longer haunted by the idea of needing to prove herself to our parents. For once, she was allowed to just exist, but that didn't stop them from trying to reach out. 3 days later, our parents showed up at my front door, uninvited. They didn't knock or call first. They just walked right in. It was clear they hadn't been told where the gathering had been held, or why we weren't there. And when they walked into my living room, the disappointment was written all over their faces. "What's going on here?" Mom asked, her tone cool. "Why didn't you come to the family reunion?" "I told you why," I replied, standing. "My ground. Emma's still recovering from everything. She doesn't need to deal with your criticism right now." "Well, maybe if you let her face reality, she wouldn't be in this mess in the first place," Dad muttered, looking around like the house was some sort of den of failure. Emma stood up from the couch, her face pale. "You're right, Dad. I'm not perfect. But you know what? I'm trying. And that's more than I can say for any of you." I watched as she stepped forward, a wave of bravery sweeping over her. She wasn't the little girl they'd tried to mold. She wasn't the golden child. She was Emma. A woman, struggling, but strong. Dad's face turned red, and for the first time, I saw him lose his temper with her. "You're still the same," he spat. "Always acting like you know better. You can't even get your life together, and now you think you can tell me how to live." I could feel the tension in the air. Emma didn't back down, though. She simply crossed her arms and said, "No, Dad. I think I'm finally starting to figure it out. And you need to stop expecting me to be perfect." They stood there in silence for a moment before Mom finally spoke up. "I didn't come here to argue. I came because I'm worried about your future." "Worried?" Emma shook her head. "You're worried because you don't get to control me anymore." The tension in the room was thick, and I could feel every word hanging in the air, waiting for the next move. Emma stood strong, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. It was hard for her to not care about their approval, even after everything. But this time, she wasn't backing down. "Mom, Dad, I'm done," Emma said, her voice steady but firm. "I don't need your approval to live my life. I'm done trying to meet your expectations. I'm not your perfect daughter, and I'm never going to be." She looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the genuine relief in her face. "That's exactly what I've been trying to tell you," I said, stepping in. "Emma doesn't need your approval to be happy. None of us do. She came to me for help because she knew she couldn't rely on you, and now she's doing better. We're moving forward." Dad opened his mouth, but the words seemed to die on A. His lips. He couldn't argue. Not this time. But then, Mom did something I didn't expect. She took a step closer to Emma, her face softening just a bit. "I know we've made mistakes," she said, her voice quieter now. "But we just want what's best for you. I don't know how to fix this, but I'm trying." Emma hesitated, and for a moment, it seemed like she might say something. But instead, she shook her head. "You can't fix this, Mom. Not now. Not after everything." The room went silent again, and I could feel the weight of years of disappointment lingering. But Emma was no longer the little girl who would bend to their will. She was a grown woman, and she was going to live her life on her terms. "I'm going to take care of my life, my way," Emma continued, "and I don't need any more pressure from you." She turned to look at me. "Thank you for being there for me when I needed it the most." I smiled at her, relieved that, despite everything, she was finally finding the strength to stand up for herself. As our parents left, there was no grand resolution, no tearful apologies or promises to change, just a sense that things were finally shifting. Emma and I were moving forward, not because we had their approval, but because we didn't need it anymore. That night, we sat together in the living room, the silence comfortable for the first time in years. We didn't need anyone else to validate our choices. We had each other. "Thanks, Alex," Emma said quietly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You don't need to worry about that," I replied. "We've got this, together." And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we did.